Hello and welcome back to Whispers from the Dark. I want to tell you a story I've been wanting to bring to you for quite a while, but just things have been coming up I was unable to. This happened right after my dad passed away. So this probably happened in spring, early spring, 2008. I come home from work, got some sleep, woke up, and I was, after just a few hours sleep, believe it or not, I was just charged. I felt so good, so rested, and something just said, get up and get out, drive around. And I thought, this is weird, but I did. And as I was getting in the pickup, I realized that I hadn't seen something in front of the garage in the yard that's been there for years. And I thought, what happened to Dad's A-frame? So I called my son and he said it's probably taken apart behind the garage, and I looked. Not only was it not taken apart behind the garage, it wasn't on the property at all. And knowing my dad welded that in the late 50s, I know he didn't loan it to anybody. So my gut just said drive. And so I went down this road that I'm on right now, and I drove. I didn't know why I was being led to do this, but nonetheless, I did it. When Dad passed, I did ask him to, no, before he passed, I asked him to give me a sign, help me any way he could. So I was thinking maybe this is a sign. Maybe this is a message from him. So I followed my gut. And so here I am in the country, driving down the back road, and my gut leads me this direction. I knew my dad had a friend down here because I'd been there a time or two with my dad when he went to go ask him something, or, that kind of thing. And so I knew he lived down here, but he wasn't a real close friend because the guy drank a lot. And Dad doesn't drink. He never did. So I knew him and Dad were friends, but not like really good buddies. But I thought, I could ask him at least. So I pull up. I go into the trailer they had. I ask for him. He comes to the door. I asked him if he's seen my dad's A-frame, and he says no. But being a mother, and also being intuitive, I could tell he was lying. It was his body language and the way his voice changed. I could tell he was lying. I said, "Are you sure you don't have it?" He said, "No, and I'll take you to my garage or my shop and show you." So he took me out to the shop, opened it up. There wasn't enough room in there to put it. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "See, I told you." I said, "All right." And so I thanked him for his time and I left. And as I was leaving, I was going back on the main road up here. And I just had an overwhelming feeling to not leave. But I'd already looked at the only place he could have it, and it wasn't there. They had no other barns or shops, just that one little workshop building, and it wasn't in there. So I thought, what in the world? So I pull out of his driveway, which is right to my left. This is the new house. This isn't his. I think he passed away. Anyway, I came up to the sign, and my gut says, "Oh." Well, that sucked. My gut says, "Cold. Cold." And I thought, what in the world? I was getting the feeling that I was cold. And I don't know why. So I pulled into this driveway that I just pulled into. Was going to turn around and go back when I remembered that I'd met this gentleman that owned that shop back there many years ago. He's from England. He was working on getting his citizenship, or had just gotten it, one of the two. He married an American. And I thought, he was a cool guy. I'll go talk to him, see if he knows anything about it. So I go down there to talk to him. And then he's got all these old cars in his shop that he's remodeling and painting and such. And I just got carried away. I mean, I'm a sucker for old cars. So I just started looking around at him. I was like, oh my God, this one is so cool. This one reminds me of the one I had in high school, or the one my brother had, or whatever. I mean, he had probably a dozen or close classic cars. And I went out and got my cell phone so I could take some pictures. So here I am, taking pictures, looking at some of them, just drooling. And I start stepping back to get a bigger view, better view of the front of one of them. And I trip on something and almost fall. I turn to look and see what I tripped on. It was my dad's A-frame, taken apart, laying up against the wall inside that guy's shop. Well, I knew that my dad didn't know him because when I originally met him, I said something to my dad. He goes, "No, I don't know that guy." And I think several years later, we drove by there. I said something about it. Dad says, "Yeah, I never met him." So I asked him, I said, "Got a question for you." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Where did you get this back here? This frame, A-frame?" And he looked at me kind of funny, had a weird look on his face. I said, "Before you answer that question, think long and hard about if you want to get involved in what's going on." I said, "Because that is stolen property. You may or may not have known that, but now you do, and I'm the rightful owner. So just to let you know, it's your choice now how we go about this. Either you say you don't know what I'm talking about, and I call the sheriff and you can explain it to him, or you can tell me how you got it and make sure it's returned, and then we won't call the sheriff. It doesn't matter to me as long as I get it back. But whoever stole it needs to realize they've been busted." And he just looked at me and says, "I need to make a phone call." I said, "Yeah, I was just over at the guy's house you're going to be calling," and he denied knowledge of it. I said, "I tell you what, here's my phone number. You text me and let me know what you've decided, and he knows where it belongs. Y'all can come and just put it right over the fence. So, but it needs to happen in the next couple of days, or I'm calling the sheriff's department." I said, "Now I'm going to call my son and tell him." Well, it showed up. They decided to give it back, and I got it back. But think about it. How else would I have been able to know to get out and drive at that particular time and what directions to drive? And I went straight to that guy's house. And of course, he denied it, and I knew he's lying. You know, his voice and body language proved that. And as I was leaving, I do believe it was Dad saying, "You're getting cold now. You're getting cold." So I pulled in the next driveway to turn around, and I remembered the guy who had the shop that does paint jobs and restoration of old vehicles, and decided to go in and say hi. He was a cool guy when I first met him. So that's how my dad, from the grave, led me to recover stolen property. Now, I know Dad would not have loaned it, and especially to a guy that he knew drank. Because the guy who he introduced me to, and we've been at his house a couple of times, and just talked to him on the porch, he was a drunk. And Dad didn't hang out with people like that. He knew people like that, obviously. You know, he might go meet him for coffee or something, but, you know, he wasn't going to hang with him. The guy might come to my dad's to get a lawnmower part or something, but again, he wouldn't have been his best bud. And he sure would not have loaned something as important as that A-frame that he had had over 50 years. He welded that himself not long after World War II. When he got back, got set, after a few years, got settled in, started working on cars, drag racing and such. He built that, welded it, had his initials on the corners. I mean, Dad would not have known that. Dad was the kind of guy that, and I've said this before in videos, typical World War II veteran. Handshake is your word. And he had a handshake that would bring people to their knees. And he was a smaller guy. He wasn't but, 5'7" maybe. He looked like Popeye. He was strong as an ox. Always wore a cap. But your word is your bond. Your handshake is like signing a deal. And he'd give somebody the shirt off his back. He'd help a stranger. But you don't screw him. And once you've proven that he couldn't trust you, he'd have nothing to do with you. And he would not have loaned something that important to that guy. Now, first of all, the shop that he had was a little workshop building. It wasn't something with a, carport and driveway. He didn't work on cars out there. So there would have been no reason for him to even need that. Instead, I guess he took it to the guy's shop, and that really did have a shop next door. But nonetheless, Dad, in his afterlife, helped guide me to go get his stuff. I think that's pretty damn cool if you ask me. But welcome to my world. Thanks for coming back, and thanks for not giving up on me. Life has happened. It's dealt me some hard blows recently, and since the first of the year, I've been trying to, or since Christmas actually, I've just been trying to keep going. Keep my job, keep my car running, keep my job and keep moving, keep my animals alive. It's been tough. There's been some tough days. But I hadn't forgot about you guys. I appreciate every one of you. And I appreciate you hanging in there and listening. Because these stories are real. Man, I'm not even sure Stephen King could make this shit up. Straight up, I'm not sure. Pretty crazy, I know. But Dad led me to his A-frame months after he died, because it had been stolen. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that it was probably stolen either during his visitation or during his funeral, because they know everybody's going to be out of the house and off the property. So I'm thinking that's probably what had happened. And it takes a new low for a person to stoop to steal from someone that would have considered a friend and neighbor that just died. But even more so, while their family is mourning their passing. But hell has a special place for people like that. And from what I was told, that guy's already passed. And if he has, his ass is burning, no doubt, in my mind right now. Well, thanks for listening. Talk to you later. Bye. Be safe out there.